We just start off with very brief intros. Just quickly about Bloom, we are an early stage venture fund focused on tech. SaaS is quite a key area of focus. We had a couple of our companies earlier today talk. Aditya at Hotel Logics was talking on as part of one of the panels. Shivku at Exotel was also there in the morning, and then Great Tip, Girish is going to be there in the afternoon at one of the panels, so it's obviously a key area. What I thought we'll do is be helpful if you can start from this side, Minash. If all of you can briefly talk about what your company does, but also what your approach and approach to the pricing model is. I think that'll be a good way to kick off. So we can start from here.
Sure. Thanks for having me here. So as introduction, HelpShift is a B2B SaaS company focused on the mobile sector. We're basically providing a CRM for the mobile app ecosystem. So if you look traditionally at the CRM market, Salesforce pioneered that market and was largely built for B2B sort of operations, where businesses sold something to other businesses. And mobile is largely about B2C, and there aren't enough CRM players in that space, and there's enough room for disruption. And so we created HelpShift to go after the B2C companies, the mobile B2C companies. So our customers range all the way from the largest game developers on the planet, like Supercell, for example, the makers of Clash of Clans, Heyday, $4 billion revenue kind of gaming company, all the way down to the smallest indie developer based out of India building his latest app for the App Store. So we've got customers across the board, right? So at one end we have Supercell, the other end we have the little $20 kind of customer. So from a pricing standpoint, the market is so nascent. We're probably in the 7th year or the 8th year since the mobile app ecosystem opened up. And the market is so nascent, we had to be very dynamic with our pricing. And so we really couldn't settle on any model. But as a SaaS company, we wanted to make sure that for the high-touch customers like Supercell, who are paying us more than $500,000 a year in revenue, we had a high-touch model. And for the guy who's sitting out in India building his latest app and has still not started to monetize, that we had a low-touch model. So that was the dynamism of pricing is really important. You have to realize sort of who is the audience, who is the target buyer, and based on that, you have to price your product. And pricing determines sort of everything, all the way from how you execute sales and distribution.
Great. So Gurpreet, I think the other dynamic that's interesting is we've got sort of US India in the sense that Gurpreet and Dipesh, their models are very focused on the domestic India market, and Tanuja and Avinash are looking at international pricing markets. So go ahead, Gurpreet.
So thanks for having me here. BrownTape is a software product used by internet merchants, people who want to sell on sites like eBay, Amazon, Flipkart, Snapdeal, Paytm, Magento, Shopify, and so on. They could be selling on all of these channels, but their order management, shipping management, inventory management can happen from one single panel, which is BrownTape. The marketplace ecosystem in India is probably even younger than the app ecosystem, so it's very early days for us. The demand is very, very huge, and there are various different kind of customers. So we see that we see a similar pattern as Avinash has described, that we will get some clients who are multi-store retailers, 10 stores, 20 stores, and they want to go online, and they are companies with deep pockets, and they demand more, and hence you have to have a high-touch sales-based model for them. You have to throw in some extra stuff also. And then there is a huge long tail of internet merchants who are first-generation entrepreneurs, very young people sitting somewhere in Ghatkopar in Bombay in a flat and selling stuff online on 5-6 websites. And for them it has to be a low-touch, completely self-serve kind of a model. Our challenges in India are more from the perspective of collecting payments in a SaaS-based scenario is not very as frictionless in India as it is abroad. In the US you can save your credit card details and it'll keep getting billed every month. That does not work in India. We have to sell 3 month, 6 month, 12-month packs and stuff like that. Of course, for the high-end customers, that is not a problem because the sales guy is going and closing the deal. But for the long tail, it is pretty, there's a lot of friction in there. So I wouldn't say that we have solved all the problems, but we are working towards it.
Yeah, so thanks for having me as well. And I started a company, this company called Appiterate. Now this started more doing A/B testing on native apps, focused on optimizing your apps for conversions, primarily targeted towards new age mobile app companies which are looking to sell on mobile apps and do transactions there and optimize for conversions. As we have evolved, we have added more meat to the offering, especially for the marketing teams for these native apps. So these days you must be seeing that some of the push notifications are almost as irritating as the SMSs of the old times. So that's one area that we are trying to optimize with a lot of our clients, both in India and outside of India, which is to just make sure that you get a very relevant push notification. Any communication that happens from the app to the user is very, very focused on you. So any deal that you're getting or any message that you're getting is optimized for you. We also do in-app messages, and of course A/B testing is a strength area. So it's a marketing SDK for new age mobile apps. So that's what we do. In terms of pricing, our strategy is similar to Avinash's. Our companies are, in a way very similar because we are, offering an SDK which goes inside the app. The pricing is based on, a proxy for usage of the app, which is monthly active users. So that's what we track and that's what we charge to. The challenge again, being, just said by the two of the panelists is, you have a very broad spectrum, especially, on the mobile app side, there is no kind of middle class, right? Either there are poor people, poor companies, or there are very, very rich companies which are like just, just taking the game away from everyone. So you have to make sure that you're able to, give the right pricing to the right person and extract value from the people who can pay, and while make it affordable for the other guys, because many of those new apps which are not able to afford your services may in no time become huge, and then you want to be there in them. So that's the dual challenge that we face in terms of pricing.
Hi. Hi, I'm Deepesh, and Movin Sync is in the space of transport automation and optimization. We are primarily focused in making employee transportation in India more efficient and safer. The target audience which we sell is to a lot of the IT BPO companies around the country. Some of our clients include the likes of Google, Microsoft, HSBC, Oracles. Those companies which spend a lot of time and money in getting their employees safe and getting them back to their home safe. We provide a solution which is, though we sell to a lot of these big IT BPO companies, but technically we don't sell to the tech part of it. We sell to the transportation team, which is mostly the non-tech part of it. And I think one of the biggest challenges which I was discussing is a lot of time when we sell this SaaS solution, people say, you take money and just give us a URL, that's all you give. So it's a very different kind of a sell, different kind of an environment. But things are opening up, things are shaping up well. In terms of pricing, I think the way we look at pricing is, as a company, we make, though I think it's very common to say in India that everybody wants things cheap here, but frankly, we don't feel it that way. So we actually keep the pricing more as an aspirational product pricing. So we really go out and when people compare a pricing, sometimes they say, have you by chance added a zero extra to it? So, but if we are really able to show them that the product does exactly what it is supposed to do and nobody else would match it, I think a lot of them are very open and very happy to talk to you. So I think that's the way we look at pricing.
Sure. So by chance added extra zero and also suddenly changed the currency. So, we had a very interesting panel on products earlier in the day, and I think it'll be interesting to examine the linkages between product and pricing. Dipesh, maybe starting from your side now, can you maybe talk about one example where you sort of changed pricing midway? You were looking at a particular customer case, and you found a different way to optimize pricing. And within that, just also maybe just for all the panelists, you can also cover what role does pricing play. For example, is it a competitive strategy? Is it a competitive weapon? One model is where you let the users play with it, get comfortable with the product, and then price, or you focus on the product being so good where it'll command the highest price just because you have confidence in the product. So, and if you can also just cite an example which is relatable.
Sure. So I'll try to begin the points where, so to make it realistic, basically we sell technology to manage transportation. So the users are the transport team, employees, and basically there's the hardware which is fitted on cabs, and people sit in the cabs and go to the office and come back. So the standard way people would price, which we did it for the first time, was we pegged the unit as the number of vehicles. So we said that if you have X vehicles, we will charge you, let's say, 100 rupees per vehicle, and we would collect 100X from you. But very quickly we figured out that this pricing unit was basically a flawed. So the unit which we pegged to was a flawed unit, because what was happening is the better and better we kept on doing, this unit kept on decreasing for the company. So this X actually kept on decreasing. So we do better, it becomes 0.9. We do far better, it becomes 0.85. So that's when we realized that we actually did a mistake, and whatever our predecessors or whatever the industry standard was, if banana was selling per dozen, no, we'll sell it per kg, period, because that's what we realized, that bananas cannot be sold per dozen anymore. To be fair to us and to the customer, we have to change the model. So actually that's the first thing which we did, and probably I could say that in that space in the country, we actually went ahead and changed the model from a per vehicle model to a per employee model. And companies ask us that nobody under the sun pegs it to the unit to which you've pegged it to. But we sit with them and explain to them that our intentions are right, that's the reason, this is the unit to which we are pegging it to, and you will realize after 6 months that we've pegged it to the right unit. Also, I think, just as a side note, what it also helps sometimes is it's the scale of 1:10. So earlier, if a price was 1,000 rupees, now if you've pegged it to a unit which you've done for the right reason, but the scale is reduced by 10th, so even the client on the other end might just be a little more comfortable to seeing a value of 100 rather than 1,000. So first you have to figure out what unit you have to peg, especially if you are in an industry or if you are in a place which is where others haven't really cracked the problem. And I think, at least I feel, in a lot of the Indian markets, that's what is happening. People are entering industries which have not been so tech focused, and they're entering industries. So I think that's very important for a lot of entrepreneurs to get that right. That's what we feel has been the experience.
Sure. Yeah, Tanuj.
Sure. So as I said, in terms of the model for pricing, ours is monthly active users from, the very beginning. The idea was, and that's something that for the successful companies keeps going up, hopefully as, their usage improves. The other thing is that we've experimented a lot with the number of, days of free trial that we should offer. From, we were at 30 and then we went to 15. I think there is merit in, giving a flavor of the product to to the user, just to, now that depends on, your strategy. We've always focused on, giving the flavor of the user. If it's, if and when you've actually built a brand, you can actually remove the, the free trial and try to see, how it works, but essentially that's generally for a high value, high touch sale where it's more of an enterprise model. For us, it's been most of, just even for high value clients, I think having a free trial helps them evaluate the product independently. In this age, everyone is smart. They just want to see things themselves. They'll read the reviews and all, and then they'll say, okay, now let's talk, rather than, someone just pitching them the deck and showing them the deck. So yeah, that's what has worked for us.
In our case, also early on, we had this little dilemma of how we should, what are the metrics on which we should peg the pricing, much like Dipesh. And what so our dilemma was that, if we peg it on just the number of orders that a merchant processes every month, then a guy who's doing 500 rupee t-shirts will have to do 5,000-6,000 orders to be a meaningful business, whereas a guy who's doing laptops would have a meaningful business even at 500-600 laptops a month. But then a combination of number of orders and the number of channels that he needs to be present in, both these working in conjunction are able to determine the size of the business, and then that's how we peg the plans. Commenting a little bit on the free trial period, I think we are, we are still pretty early. We've just been about 12-15 months that we've been actively selling, but we are experiencing, when the scale becomes a little high, that 30 days seems a bit too long. Because the guy signs up, he's excited, he's discovering all the features, he's calling us up a lot and so on, and that finishes in about 10 or 12 days. And then at that time, if you close him and he makes a commitment, a monetary commitment, I think then there'll be, because a software like ours is an efficiency provider. It's like Avinash said at lunch, is it a vitamin or is it a painkiller? So our software is a little bit of vitamin. So we have to close at the right time. But then again, we'll have to run experiments. The other challenge is that we have to close at least on a 3-month pack and not just a 1-month payment. So the quantum of money is a little high, and we'll have to see how 14-day trial works. But we'll probably run those experiments sometime soon.
So pricing pretty much determines the destiny of your company and how you're going to shape it. I have 2 rules to pricing. One is build the best product in the market, so that way you can always price above market, right? So if the market price is X, you can always price well above it. A classic example of that is iPhone versus Samsung, right? I mean, Samsung just announced recently that this quarter they're going to have a 60% drop in their profits, right? So, and it's obvious why. The second rule of pricing is never leave any money on the table, right? So how do you actually determine that? As a startup, it's really hard for you to go out of the gate with the right pricing model and to say, I'm not going to leave any money on the table, right? So the way you do that is, the best thing that happened to us is we followed sort of Paul Graham's advice very closely, where he said, do all the non-scalable things upfront, right? Do things that are hard upfront. So what we did was we launched the product in private beta. We never put a pricing page up. We made, and if people wanted to buy the product, when we opened it up, we said, contact us. And we had humans talking to every single customer who signed up for the beta trial period, right? We didn't want to guess how much we could extract from the market. And we ran that experiment for about a year, for 1 year, which is really hard for investors, because especially Indian sort of investors are very impatient, right? And they will not allow you to do that. And we were like, no, we are going to do that, right? And so our ramp up was a little slow, but we were able to extract maximum dollars from all of the customers. Just to give you an example, in our industry, our competitors are very well known. So Salesforce is at the top of the pyramid, Zendesk is sort of at the middle of the pyramid, Freshdesk is at the bottom of the pyramid, and we're kind of between Salesforce and Zendesk as an indicator, right? And the only reason we could position ourselves there was that we didn't have a pricing page or a pricing model up front. We talked to every single customer, and a lot of our customers had already used traditional CRMs like Salesforce or Zendesk, and we had to win that business away. And what we did really interestingly with our pricing is that we decided to do value-based pricing. And we were able to demonstrate to our customers that we're really adding that value that we said we're going to add. And so they were happy to rip our competitors out and pay us 3 times what they were paying our competitors. 3 to 10 times is what we were able to extract from from most of our customers who signed up in that period, right? Even the largest deals that we did, we did it at 3x what they used to pay our competitors. And the only way you can do that is to like prove to them, you have to stick to our value. You have to say, this is the value we're adding, and you have to prove that that's the value that you're able to create, right? So for our largest customer, for example, they have 400 people or 400 employees using our product every day. And we were able to take that deal away from our competitor at 3x simply because we said our software is so much more efficient that your contact rate, which is one of the metrics that's used in the CRM industry, will reduce by 50%. We guarantee that. And we ran a trial period. We gave them 3 months of software for free. Say, run it. And if you are able to reduce your contact rate by 50%, we'll talk pricing then. And they did. We were able to prove that the contact rate dropped by 50%, and we were able to go in and sign a deal and take our competitor's deal away.
Yeah, very helpful. I didn't realize that about Samsung. That is interesting, the 60% drop.
Yeah.
So, I guess we see a lot of entrepreneurs today that have products that have hybrid pricing strategies, right? They're going after domestic markets and also international markets. So maybe a question for Tanuj and Avinash here, and then we can get to you all later, is what feedback, advice, thoughts do you have for entrepreneurs who are starting in India and then, they're sort of taking on the world, and is it as simple as, pricing it as 3x, or are there some specific considerations that happen when you are going after international market? What are those top 2-3 things that you have to keep in mind, as you expand?
Sure. So one thing that has changed a lot since the last maybe 5 years is that we're seeing some good product companies come out of India. Right now, if you are selling to that segment, then that's a huge advantage in terms of just testing out your product here. We have Flipkart, Snapdeal, MakeMyTrip. All these guys are kind of not exactly in they're not following 100% what happens outside of India, but it's similar. So that allows you, if they are in your target segment, then you can actually pilot your product with them, build out the product, and then once you have established a decently strong product, then take on the international market, which was very different from what was happening earlier on. So my interaction with Jaspreet from Dhruva was that at that time none of the Indian companies were actually even considering buying a per seat kind of a model or a per person kind of a SaaS offering. So from day one, their focus was outside of India. So that's one thing that seems to be working for us today. The other thing is that in terms of pricing, my sense is that the companies in India which do value your pricing, do value your product, they are already evaluating international products. So for example, all the big product startups in India, irrespective of you existing or not, they will look at, the best products out there in the market. So if you are looking at an international play, then, depends on your pricing strategy, but my suggestion would be that go after and, peg your product internationally, basis that price. That also proves that, if you're able to sell at that high price in India, then there is value in your product, right? Otherwise, a free product sold to someone doesn't prove anything, right? In the early days, you're actually trying to prove whether there's value in the product and if you can, scale up later on. So that's been my learning on these two fronts. Avinash?
I think the question was specific about what do you do for international sort of sales,
That's right.
right? So I think my company from day one was set up to sell internationally first because the product we were delivering in the market didn't exist. We were the first, and so the global market was the most obvious place. Mobile apps are kind of popular in India now, but when we launched our product, India was still not the critical, boiling point for mobile apps, right? So we had to start internationally. My advice is that the first 100 deals you do, you want to talk to all your customers, right? And so I actually went out and lived in the US. I hired salespeople, I trained them, and we went out and talked to each and every customer that signed up for our trial and converted them. And we did that, and that experience helped us build everything. It helped us build the pricing model. It helped us build the sales model. And so I would say setting up, if you, this is not one method that fits all, but if you're going to start internationally, then it's better for you to go relocate to that market where the critical mass is, set up there, hire salespeople, feet on the ground, talk to all the customers. Once you've figured out sort of how you can sell the product, how you can price it, then you go ahead and set up the low-touch models, right? And that's what we did. A lot of the other, there are other successful models in India, for example. You know, Zoho, Freshdesk, all of these companies, they basically have created clones of existing US products. The market is very well understood. The pricing is well understood. You don't need to go feet first into a market, right? You can launch sitting right here in India, and that's what they did. I mean, Freshdesk launched out of India. Price was their sort of USP, and you know, so they went after that market. And so it's completely possible to build a company that way as well, right? So there are two, I mean, basically, if you're building something that's very innovative, that's very new, and you're testing new waters in a global market, then you have to be in that market.
Sanjay, if I may ask a slightly more pointed question to Tanuj, because you know you said that you have 50% of your customers in India and 50% abroad, and the Indian customers are also, you can say, globally oriented. They are looking at you know, best companies out there. So, but when you charge an Indian customer, you know, let's say based on something you decided that we charge 1,000 rupees. For the same exact thing, would you charge 3,000 to the US customer, or?
Depends on how well funded the companies are, you know. With the billion-dollar fundings floating around, I think for some companies paying is not a problem anymore. I think that's very industry specific. You know, if you are focusing on the high-tech sector today, I think the prices are similar. They don't mind. They actually want the product, the best product. They don't mind paying a little more or a little less. And that's where, you know, just to add to Avinash's point, that I feel like, you know, now it's the kind of the tipping point where it is actually possible to start international product, you know, first of its kind, sitting out of India. It's just now getting to become possible by working with, you know, these top Indian guys, because they are pretty evolved in the way they function. So yeah, that's what I feel.
So you would start with 3,000.
Yeah, I would definitely. And you know, of course, the very early, you know, the very early stage deals, you don't want to focus too much on the price. You just want to get them to use the product, and you know that also helps you develop the product better. But you know, as soon as you feel that, you know, hey, this is adding enough value, and I want to now prove the pricing model. I want to prove value in addition to just, you know, just usage. I want to make sure that people are paying for it. I would charge the same.
Sure, very helpful. So Dipesh, you know, maybe you and Gurpreet can talk about some more fun questions like collections and conversions. So if we come to collections, you know, it seems like the 30 or 60-day trial period, 30-day trial period has become a de facto. You know, most product companies are using that. So maybe you all can talk a bit about the conversion, or what happens at that critical time after the trial period is over, when these customers, you know they're going to get charged, and how do you grab them, you know, if they like the product? Just talk a bit about that conversion phase. Sure.
So I think you would have a lot of, so we've been talking to investors, and we had funding recently. The first most important question, if you would talk to a company which says that you sell in India, they say that the first thing everybody checks is, are you able to collect anything for what you sell? So things just remain like that. That's a challenge. It's very important, and I think we are lucky that way, or probably if the industry is different, things have to be designed that way. We focus on industries, though I said that the sales are tough, it takes a lot of time, but at least we sell to all these blue chip companies. So we are able to make collections, but unlike a typical SaaS model where you pay for a 1-month subscription or a 3-month subscription, it's actually the reverse, right? If you talk to anybody, you can't get upfront. After 30 days, you'll have to collect at least. At the earliest you can collect is after 30 days. But I think because of the industry to which we sell, at least those payments are guaranteed. That's one way you should look at the collection of the payments specifically. And about the trial part, I think what we've realized two things. So we do offer free trials, but what we tend, and our trials are actually taken by enterprises. So because it's a free trial, we also figured out that the responsibility of the guy who's taking the trial versus the guy who actually ordered for the trial is different. So earlier it used to be like anything you say, we will do it to you. But now we've kind of put it in a very scripted format. The guy who's the decision maker, we want to understand what is it that you want to see in a trial. And I think just to add a little more context to it, because we sell in India, most of these are not a self-service trials. So people actually go and actually do trials there. It's not over the net trials. So we write down the script on what this guy who's the decision maker wants to get out of it, and we tell him 30 days or 3 days, it's none of your concern. You see what you want out of it, and after those many days, we're going to show this to you. And after that, we would want a decision from you. And most of the times, you also disclose the pricing to tell him that if you like it, this is what you're going to pay for it. So I think trials are surely important, but what we figured out, at least in the Indian scenario where it's a high touch point products, that you better understand what are the goals of the trials. So I think that's how we're trying to crack it.
Sure. And collections you'll do at the end of, you said 90 days or?
No, it's
every
generally
quarter?
60 days, 30 plus 30. So the things are delivered, plus after that 30 days, so it's 60 days. So if I give you something on 1st of January, 1st of March is the earliest I'll get money.
Invoice, got it. Go ahead.
In our case, for the high touch customers, we have we collect upfront. We collect for 12 months upfront. But there is, it's not the entire chunk of what we will earn from that customer, because we have a slightly performance-based model over there. So, but we try to get a handsome chunk upfront, and much like HelpShift, we've also early on concentrated on those larger customers and making sure that we have some proof of the pudding. For the long tail, low touch customers, it's a challenge because, as I said, we have to sell 3-6 months packs, and every 3 months or every 6 months, the guy reconsiders the decision and the payment and renegotiates and so on. But what we've seen is that during the 30-day trial, there is a phase where there are too many questions from a customer. He starts using it, and then the nitty-gritty is, how do I do this in Amazon? How do I, if I'm using eBay PowerShip, how do I do this? So those questions start coming in, and we've trained the guys who are in activation. We've trained them to identify those questions, and when they are answering those questions, start pushing in, maybe even some discounting to close him right there. So that's how we are trying to do it.
Sure. So Tanuj, maybe you could talk, just contrast your domestic versus the international piece.
Right. So my suggestion is that if you can take if it's a less than 20,000-30,000 payment monthly, if you can get them to put in their card, that just takes away the pain from your life. In terms of a recurring payment. Of course, many Indian, I think it's not, allowed to take recurring payments. You have to, just do some, set up a company outside and, just use Stripe to collect recurring payments. But yeah, so if you can take it on card. Otherwise, see, most of the people in the finance teams are the same, right, across industries. So their mentality is that, hey, it's like fine, 30-day credit period is this. So after 30 days they'll pay, and then there's credit period. So it becomes a pain to collect. You can mitigate that by doing quarterly or annual upfront, wherever you do have that bargaining power. Internationally, I think everyone is fairly, comfortable paying with their cards, or you don't have to remind them. They just set it on the automated thing and it just keeps coming. Yeah, the other experience is that the Indian guys who are actually outside of India, it's still much harder to collect payments from them. You have to keep reminding them.
Yeah, Abhinash, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think I heard two parts to the question, right? One was conversion, the other is collection.
That's right.
Correct. So how many of you are SaaS entrepreneurs here? Raise of hands. Okay. So here's sort of lessons we learned about conversion, right? So for conversion in a SaaS business like ours, literally there are two types of conversion. So one is high touch and the other is low touch.
Go ahead.
Time check? Okay. So you have to be really good at sort of segmenting your customers. So right in the trial period when they sign up, you want to be able to get information from them and do research and figure out whether they are a high-touch customer that requires a salesperson to call them and initiate a conversation, or whether they are like a, below $100 kind of per month kind of customer who you want to actually automate through a low-touch process, right? And that's very, very important. So at HelpShift, what we do is as soon as somebody signs up for a trial online, we collect some information about them, about the app they're using. We have a research team in Pune, and the research team essentially goes in within 24 hours. They update our CRM with information about that customer. And then they mark that account as a high-touch or a low-touch account. If it's a low-touch account, you can put them on a drip campaign, and there are many tools available for that. I'll name a few, you can write it down. There's Pardot, there's Gainsight, there's Totango, there's a whole bunch of them out there that literally you can integrate with your product. So as they use your product, and if they've used certain features of your product, you can fire off a drip campaign email saying, hey, you should sign up now, or you should start paying now, right? So that's the low touch approach. And then for customers that are like large accounts that are going to bring you more than, so our determination is if it's $1,000 or above account per month, then a salesperson will touch them, right? And so then we do a high touch kind of model where the salesperson starts emailing them personally, introduces themselves, says, hey, can I get on a phone call with you? Can I show you a demo? Can I understand what your needs are? So that's really how the conversion process works in the 30-day trial. About collections, we did all the hard things first. So our first 100 customers, we made them pay for the entire year up front. It was an experiment we ran and said, if we can't get these customers to pay for a year up front, then we're not providing enough value, right? So we pushed ourselves really hard, and the first accounts were all like a year up front. And after that, when we introduced automated billing, so we didn't do automated billing on our product for an entire year. Everything was paper invoice. We did all the hard stuff. And then after a year, we integrated with Stripe, and we have monthly recurring billing. And still our customer base, if you look at our customer base, 90% of our deals are a year up front. We have more cash flow than revenue, which is a good thing for a company always. So we don't have collections problem, right? People are paying us up front. And all these smaller customers, the $20 customers, are the ones that are opting for monthly recurring billing, right? So that's, it's your choice on how you build this out.
No, that's very helpful. I think in India, if you find a customer that pays up front, never leave him, right? So never. So thanks to the panelists.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
for the audience for listening.